Hello, and welcome to Disrupt Your Now. This is the show for entrepreneurs who want their business to fit the life that they want to lead. So, whether you already own a business and you want to shake things up, or you want to start a business and you want to make sure that you're doing things right and learn from the people who've already made the mistakes, Disrupt Your Now is the place for you. And I'm thrilled tonight to have as my guest Mr. BK Fulton, who is also a Hokie, woo, and he lives in Richmond, Virginia. So I'm just thrilled to have another Virginian, another Hokie, and BK has an awesome story to tell. He came up through the ranks of Verizon, well, different companies, but ended up retiring from Verizon, a high executive position, and he and his wife started this wonderful company, Soulidifly Productions, which is film production and investment, media, basically everything within that world. And you have just such an amazing story of how y'all got started and why you did it, BK. But first, I want to say welcome to the show and thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So can you give our guests a little bit of background, how you got to where you are?
Sure. How far you want me to go back?
Oh, well, you know what? I thought it was funny. Go all the way back to tech.
Okay.
If you don't mind,
No, that's not too bad. I thought you might say kindergarten or something.
No.
Yeah, but yeah, say tech. Let's see. I from Hampton, Virginia, and was one of the first. Was actually the first group of students going into tech's engineering program when they required incoming students to buy a computer as part of their standard school supply. So tech was the first school in the country to actually have that requirement, and probably in the world.
Wow.
I know that while we were there in the early 80s, it was a place that had the most computers per capita of any place on the planet, Little Blacksburg, Virginia. And so I think technology has always been a part of my skill set, what I do, what I'm known for, and that was really ignited at Virginia Tech, and just and some stuff in high school before that, but it really came to a crescendo at Tech, and so I studied engineering for a while, then architecture, and then finished in the School of Architecture.
Well, I want to ask you something. I'm sorry for interrupting. Would you mind? Didn't you have a story about in the? Were you the one that had the story about being in the library?
We'll get to that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So was at Tech and ended up finishing up in architecture, and then got an opportunity to compete for a scholarship to go to graduate school, and ended up winning the scholarship, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation scholarship to the top 40 policy schools in the country. And it was fun. I had no idea that I could do that after my first couple of years at Tech because it wasn't going so well. It was just too many beautiful women, and I played too much basketball and slept too much. And
hey, I've been there, done that.
Been there and done that. And then you get wiser and you get older. And I realized that what I did then really could shape my future. But I was so nervous about school that I said, well, this ain't working out. So I'm going to go to the library and plan my escape from Virginia Tech. I was like below sea level, way below. And ended up going to the library. And in modern libraries that use the Dewey Decimal System, the E185.5 section is a section on Black people. And I landed there, and I don't think it was an accident. I think it was a divine intervention of sorts, because it was exactly what I needed. It was the antidote for me. And I started reading these books, and I was reading about Lewis Latimer and Granville T. Woods and Elijah McCoy. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, these guys did engineering stuff and they look like me. And I can do it. And this guy improved on the light bulb, and this guy invented the third rail and sold a patent to General Electric in 1901. And this guy when we say the real McCoy, we're talking about this guy, Elijah McCoy, and people don't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And so it lit a spark in me. And I went literally from the probations list to the dean's list to the board of directors at Virginia Tech.
Wow.
And that's the power of stories.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, I do the graduate program, do well. One professor suggested that I should get what's called a terminal degree. So a PhD, a Juris Doctorate, a law degree, or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided for practical purposes that I would pursue a Juris Doctorate, so a law degree in intellectual property, telecommunications, and electronic commerce. So I did that, and then worked for a very large nonprofit called the National Urban League,
Mm-hmm.
where I founded their technology programs and policy department, and we were helping communities all over the country to train people to get jobs to take care of themselves and their families. And then at some point, we were bridging the digital divide, and a company called America Online, AOL, got wind of the work I was doing and asked me to come and help them out. And so I did that. And we were building technology centers all over the planet with the Peace Corps, a program called Power Up. I think President Clinton was the president at the time, and he helped to announce the program. And it was pretty spectacular. So we did that work. And then I got to the place where, Steve, who was the chairman of AOL, Steve Case, he resigned, his whole team left. And so I went into government for a while. I had a family by then and thought that, I'd do this safe government job.
Yeah.
Would take care of my family and just, live like everybody else does. And it wasn't to be. I spent a few years at the Department of Commerce, and Verizon called. And they said, we need somebody who's a lawyer, somebody preferably with engineering background and management experience and technology. I was like, oh, you need me. And I took a strategy job with them, headed a group called Strategic Alliances, and did well with that. And then they asked me what I wanted to do next. And I said, I wanted to be in the C-suite. I wanted to be in charge of a budget, of a team, wanted to take care of my customers and grow an enterprise. Mm-hmm. And so I got a chance to run Verizon West Virginia initially as a way, as kind of CEO school. And then that went well. We ended up selling that business as part of a $13.5 billion acquisition.
Wow.
And I got Virginia. And Virginia was, 5 times as large as West Virginia. Then I got the whole Mid-Atlantic region, which was 20 times as large as West Virginia. And retired in 2015 after having led that business and that team for a while here in Virginia. And then, decided that God wasn't done with me yet. And thinking about what I wanted to do, I wanted to leave a legacy. I wanted to pay forward the gifts that were given to me, the stories. And so decided that, if reading about heroes and sheroes could put my life on rocket boosters, then what would happen if I put it on the big screen and with great music and great scripts and great cinematography? And Soulidifly was born. So we're 13 films deep now. As a matter of fact, our next film comes out on March 4th. It's our first Bruce Willis film. It's called A Day to Die. It'll be in theaters and on digital. So that's called a day date release, where we just release it on most platforms at the same time.
Okay.
And so we got 13 movies. We'll have another movie to come out this year. We're working with the group to do a movie with Jamie Foxx on Reginald Lewis. I think I've got 12 or 13 books. I've got a new agent. I think 2 books, or 1 or 2 will come out this year. They're on the floor beside me. two novels. I've done about 10 children's books, and a middle school book, and a few elementary books. And now these 2, about 300 pages each, or novels. I write about love a lot because I like love.
Yeah.
I think divine serendipity is what happens when God puts you in the proximity with people you need to meet or work with to give love a chance. At the end of the day, our best efforts resolve in love. And so for me, people will say, "Man, you're always smiling, you're always happy," and I feel like I've been blessed. I feel like I'm fortunate. I feel like I spent my first 50 years doing what I was trained to do, and now I get to spend the rest of my life doing what God made me to do. And
Yeah.
that's to tell these stories. So that's the short version of how we got to Soulidifly Production.
I just love your story so much because those lessons, that inspiration that you got from reading those books in the library at Virginia Tech helped you get to where you grew to in your career. And now you're giving back through delivering those stories to other people, or stories similar. And I'm going to cry. I just think it's awesome the way that your life has come full circle. And
Thank
you
you.
have your beautiful wife beside you that I read about how y'all met and you like saw each other across the room. It's like that was meant to be, wasn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's kind of how it happened. Jackie and I met volunteering at a friend's house, and we were helping kids to find money for school for college. And she came up to me at the end of the meeting and said, "Hi, my name's Jackie Stone. I'm supposed to meet you. I'm one of your lawyers." Turns out her firm was representing Verizon here in
Oh, okay.
Virginia and probably in some other places. And so she was late to that meeting, and it was the first time I'd met her. She was early to the next meeting.
Oh.
And we ended up sitting together at dinner, and pretty much haven't been apart ever since.
Yeah, y'all look like you just have an amazing relationship.
We're fortunate. We're
And
fortunate.
so tell them about your transition, how you moved into this business. What spurred y'all to do it?
Well, Jackie loves libraries as well. As a matter of fact, she thought she might be a librarian one day. Her dad was a lawyer. He was actually the first Black lawyer in Virginia.
Oh, wow.
And he also created the first integrated law firm in Virginia. And Judge Stone, worked so much that she said, "I'm not going to do that." Well, guess what? She's a lawyer now.
Yeah.
And she was always working.
Mhm.
But we both realized that there's tremendous power in stories, whether it's her father's story, other stories like the ones we've already talked about with Lewis Latimer and the like, Harriet Tubman, those kind of people. And so we said that, if we can tell these stories and get them out to as many people as possible, then they can have the same kind of awakening that I did. We also have a magazine called Soul Vision Magazine. We publish monthly. We've had Stevie Wonder, Quincy Jones, Commissioner Gordon Williams is on the cover currently. He's got several Grammys. He discovered Amy Winehouse, produced for Santana,
Wow.
did the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill album, which is one of the best albums ever. And worked on so many different projects. But we cover people like that in the magazine. Our TV network, soulvision.tv, has about 500 hours of programming, and all this stuff is free.
Yeah.
For us, it's about telling the stories. I mean, too often when women and minorities get to tell their stories, they have to do it through this prism of sorrow. So it's, it's slavery films, it's domestic violence films, it's boys in the hood films, it's Pookie got shot films. We're trying to give Pookie a break. And we want to tell some of these other stories that pour into your soul in such a way that you get motivated, that you get on a path of excellence for your best life. What ends up happening, every story has a right to be told, but when you get the sad ones, they're not too formulaic on how to become the head of Verizon, or
Yeah.
how to write a book called Disrupt Your Now, or how to have your own show. And we have to tell those stories too, because they're equally empowering. They're probably more empowering.
Yeah.
When I talk to people and talk about what made the difference for them, a lot of them share a story. Somebody did this, and I saw that a person like me accomplished this thing, and that told me that I could do it too.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're doing with those with that information with our movies, whether it's Hell on the Border about Bass Reeves, or some of the other stories we're telling when we tell the Reginald Lewis story, it's about shining a light on these little known stories that can help people today to know that they can accomplish, that they can go forward. I mean, just last night we were talking to a group of students from Washington and Lee, and it was 3 lawyers. So my wife, myself, and another gentleman, and we were telling them the bottom line is you have to be excellent. And when you're excellent, you kind of become the pace car. And so you live a life that's not one where you're following or chasing, but everybody's chasing you. And the good is finding you. The accolades are finding you. And so what we have learned to do as a team is to focus on the work, focus on lifting, focus on being our absolute best. And what we tell ourselves is that, a lot of times we're going to do some great stuff. We've won a lot of awards with our projects. But if we can't do great things all the time, then we'll do small things in a great way.
Oh, yeah.
And so we always approach our problems, our challenges with the spirit of excellence. And that tends to serve us well and allows us to win.
I love that. Do small things in a great way. I mean, what a great approach, because so many people try to take on too much, and they know what they're capable of, but they feel like they have to do it all at once. So I just love that. I have to say, my husband and my sister and I watched Hell on the Border Saturday night. All 3 of us loved that movie.
Thank you.
And the soundtrack, I loved it. I can still hear it in my head. But I'd never even heard of him.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Those movies, it's like you're educating people and we're learning, but not in a preachy way, in a fun way.
In a fun way.
Like, what? I didn't even know this person existed. And what a cool story it is.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that Bass Reeves was the prototype for the Lone Ranger, and that the arrest record, over 3,000 arrests, 14 kills. He never shot first. He was always in self-defense. And he had a Native American companion. He had a white horse. And it started to hear all the Lone Ranger stuff.
Oh, that's funny.
But back when he was doing his thing, and as the first black sheriff, west of the Mississippi, and then when TV came about, it just wasn't popular to tell the story of this black guy going around arresting people and sometimes killing people. Yeah. And so it was easier to turn him into the Lone Ranger. Mm-hmm. And what we find is that all happens a lot. So you go through kind of 100 years of this, and what you realize is that sometimes the difference between how one set of children perform and another set of children is what they believe about themselves.
Yes.
And if you never tell them that they have done anything of note, it's really hard to believe that you can do everything everybody else can do.
Yeah, it is. And especially if everybody that you're surrounded by, they're not doing anything like you would dream about. Right. And I have to say one thing about myself, something personal. I grew up in this very rural county in Virginia. I didn't know that we were below poverty level until I was probably a sophomore in college and took sociology, and they started talking about it. I was devastated, BK.
Wow.
And just the label, it didn't change anything at all about my life. I mean, we had this little enclave. My grandparents lived next door to me, and my aunt and uncle, and we had horses and ponies and, everything, all this stuff to play with. And living in a rural area, I knew I didn't have as much as my friends had, whose parents were doctors and lawyers and everything. But my father owned a little business, a music store. And, I just thought we were basically middle class. So just that one label, right. I still remember what it made me feel like.
Yeah.
And then I started feeling like I don't belong, even though my sister and all these other people were up there with tech. And that was just one label. So I can imagine the effects of repeated labels.
Sure,
You
sure.
know?
Over centuries.
Yeah.
And so these are the kinds of things we find ourselves trying to overcome as we move our country forward, as we develop our communities, develop ourselves.
Mhm.
And I think it was James Baldwin who said that one of the first things you have to do as you awaken is you have to unconvince yourself of all the lies you were told.
Yeah.
Because we don't always tell the whole story.
Yeah.
And we tell the story that works for the people in power. And for those who are from the wrong side of the tracks, or the ones who are not in power, or the ones who are, you know, on the come up, they've got to find inspiration from somewhere. They have to have the grit to keep going. And what I love about reading and stories is you get these stories of amazing resilience and tenacity, of amazing resolve in the face of insurmountable obstacles. So what that teaches us is if our ancestors can deal with the things they dealt with and still strive to go forward, we don't have any excuses.
Yeah.
Definitely no excuse for mediocrity. And so again, we're back to this point about excellence. And you know, the biggest challenge I find with young people today is figuring out how to help them to know how great they really are. And when people say, you know, you're pregnant with potential, it's not just some platitude, that it is sincere, it is real. You can do whatever. I mean, part of the reason that I dabble in so many different things is that I want to be an exemplar of the relative ability of all of us to be whatever we choose to be. You get to have the life you're willing to work for. On my last nonfiction book, The Tale of the Tea, I won a National Nonfiction Book Award. On the cover is a guy named Dr. George Grant. Now, the book is about the power of honest conversations to heal. I wrote it with a Jewish friend and one of my wife's law partners, and I did that deliberately because I wanted to show how people from different communities can work together well.
Yeah.
And have these revelations. I mean, Jonathan Blank is like my brother, and it's a fun relationship. The book was well received. But the guy on the cover, Dr. Grant, was the first Black professor at Harvard. He was a dentist and invented the golf tee in 1899.
Oh my gosh.
And so people who have been on the, you know, outside of the mainstream, have been on the margins, as I like to say, or had to be multi-talented, had to do a number of things. So I do these different things to show people what we're capable of. So yeah, engineer, architect, lawyer, manager, but also, you know, we needed songs for one of our films, so I write songs.
Yeah.
You know, we needed this creative work done, so I became a producer. Yeah, and I wanted to write these books because there weren't enough books with Black kids on the cover. So I wrote, you know, a bunch of children's books. And we give away the curriculum and work with the #1 graduate school of education at UPenn to deliver quality curriculum around my books. But again, you can do whatever you choose to do, what you set your mind to do, and then once you figure that out, and you owe it to yourself and your community to be the best version of yourself, because that's how you inspire others to do even more, to go even further. And so what I hope is that the work that we're doing is inspiring enough so that people believe that they can actually do whatever their heart desires.
I just love the whole thing, and I love how you're so multifaceted, and that helps other people realize they don't have to just go down this one track and do this one thing, that we all have so many parts to ourselves, and we owe it to ourselves, and as you said, to our community, to find those gifts that we have and put them to the best use. I also love that you have some big names in your films and in your magazine and stuff, but you also are giving opportunity to some smaller name people that wouldn't have gotten the opportunity through traditional Hollywood, right?
Absolutely. One of our most award-winning films, One Angry Black Man, I think there was only one known actor in the whole film.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else, they were first time, and they knocked it out of the park. I mean, they cried real tears. People that see the film say it's the most powerful thing I've seen in 10 years, 20 years in my life. And so we were really, really humbled by that. We had a Pulitzer Prize finalist for film critique who gave it a 3 out of 4 stars and loved the film. And so again, we didn't set out to win awards per se. We set out to be excellent.
Yeah.
We set out to be truthful. We set out to share something that might touch somebody.
Yeah.
And apparently it did. We did another film, All Unknown Talent, that won the equivalent of the African Academy Award, the Oscar. We won the top AMA Award in 2020 with a film called Joseph. We beat out a lot of higher budget films with a lot more well-known stars. And our first stage production, Thoughts of a Colored Man, was the #1 new show on Broadway throughout its run. And then we would still be going, but COVID shut us down. We had 7 live players, and 5 of them came down with COVID like at the same time.
Oh, God.
So we shut it down, but I'm trying to resurrect that through streaming. And so
and that's nominated for GLAAD Award, right?
A GLAAD Award, and I'm fingers crossed. I'd hope a few more.
Yeah,
definitely. Yes. So you've been doing your homework.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, everything about you and your company is so fascinated. So the more I saw, the more I read. That film, Joseph, I've not gotten to watch it yet, but that looks really amazing.
Yeah, I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to like that one. If you ever want a fun romantic comedy, love.com will do that. Okay. The movie that's coming out in March, A Day to Die, with Bruce Willis, Leon, Frank Grillo, a few others. That one's more of a straight shoot 'em up.
Yeah.
So you make all these different types of films, biopics and stuff like that, and you make one to pay the bills.
Yeah.
This is my pay the bill film.
Yeah. Can you tell us about what was the very first film that y'all did when you went on that trip to Italy?
Oh, wow.
Was that kind of like an accidental film that you did?
No, it wasn't an accident at all. It was, we were working on a few others, and we had planned a trip to Sicily, Rome, and a few other places with a dear friend who was the ambassador from Mexico to Singapore, Brunei, and Myanmar. Eduardo Ramos Gomez, and his wonderful friend. He actually was one of my wife's law colleagues, and they started their career together. And he would do these trips every year to some exotic place, and the groups would expand. We call ourselves kind of the 100 loosely. And when I told him I was in the movie business, he said, "Well, let's make a movie." And first we were going to show one of my movies on one of the trips, but they're so choreographed, and it just wasn't time to do 3 hours or 2 hours, whatever. So we had a cinematographer, a director who followed us around on this trip, and we planned scenes from our favorite movies. So Cinema Paradiso, Life is Beautiful, Gladiator. And then the people dressed in character and acted out the roles. And then the guy, kind of put it together and sent it to us. I can share it with you if you want to see it. It actually turned out pretty good because it's us traveling around most of Italy. Mm-hmm. And so when we did the scenes in the Gladiator, we have real horses, chariots, Roman soldiers, everybody in tunics. It was a hoot. It was a hoot. And, this film was a heck of a way to memorialize a vacation with people you love.
I'll say, yeah, I would love to watch it. I wondered if it was out anywhere that we could watch it.
I can send it to you.
Sure, I'd love to. Can you tell us about the scare that you and your wife had that made y'all realize we got to go for our dreams?
Oh yeah, you're talking about when Jackie was in the hospital.
Yeah.
So right before one of our trips, actually, 2017, I got a call, and Jackie wasn't. That's my wife's name, Jackie. She wasn't feeling so well, and wanted me to maybe take her to the doctor. And we ended up at the hospital where she was going to have some tests, and one of the machines that was required wasn't working so well. So we ended up at a hospital in Charlottesville, the medical center at UVA, and found out that she had a couple of aneurysms. And one had ruptured, and then what's called an AVM, anterior vascular malformation. And she needed surgery. As a matter of fact, she needed level 10 out of 10 emergency surgery.
Wow.
And she had, with that combination of factors, she had about a 50-50 chance of survival. And if she survived, 80% likelihood of substantial disability, and a 1% chance of going back to practice law. I mean, Jackie was the first African-American female law partner at a major law firm in the history of Virginia.
Wow.
The first worldwide hiring partner at her firm. So she was a big deal. People loved her and respected her. She had given a lot of people their first jobs in the legal community. And here we were, fighting for her life. They also told us to plan for about 8 months to a year of recovery. Could be in the hospital 6 to 8 months, and then another 6 months to 12 months recovery at home. And Lisa, God is good. We were back at home in 2 weeks. She was back to work in 4, and driving in 5. And you wouldn't know that she had any kind of brain surgery. She's totally healed, back. I say I got Jackie 2.0 because she's got an evolved sense of humor.
Oh, really?
And an evolved determination. So for the most part, I hear mostly yes, dear. But occasionally I will hear a little something else, and I know that that's just part of the new her.
What an amazing story, though. And that is such a great lesson to those of us who want to give up. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in health. It could be business, any kind of setback. A lot of times our first reaction is, why even try? And you're sitting there with all those statistics, everything. None of it was good. None of it was, yes, sorry, hold on a minute. I have software trying to update, sorry. None of it was good. Everything that they were telling you was very small percentage of good chance of good things.
Right.
And high percentage chance of bad things. And the fact that y'all kept it together and stayed strong, and it's just a great lesson for people. Don't give up. Don't give up, because you never know.
Yeah, well said. And you have to, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best.
Yeah.
And God blesses all of us to turn our dreams and ideas into their tangible equivalents. You have to have the faith, be willing to do the work, and expect the outcomes. And so what our faith told us was, as long as we did our part, we work with the doctors, we show up, we're positive and prayerful, then they will do all they know how to do, and we do all we know how to do, and God kicks in and does the rest.
Yeah.
And if you got God on your side, it's hard to lose.
He wasn't done with Jackie.
Wasn't done with Jackie. And but definitely it helped us to appreciate how fragile life is and how important it is to have an advocate when you're in the hospital or anywhere, but
Mhm.
also to try to lead with the best version of yourself. In life, you run into a lot of people, and some great and some scoundrels. And you don't judge everybody by the scoundrels.
Yeah.
And you pray that more people become great. And, for us, we walk the talk. And, in these companies where we give away some of the stuff, the magazine, the TV network in particular, where we tell positive stories in our movies and in our
Mhm.
stage productions, where the books are designed to help kids to know it's okay to be who they are and to rock their own style and to be comfortable in their own skin. All those things are deliberate, and we are deliberately trying to incite a sense of pride and a sense of you can do it, a sense that you are enough, and all those messages that various people and institutions in our communities, from our parents, grandparents, loved ones, the church, your schools, that's all they're really trying to impart, is this idea that you can do it and you can do whatever and that sort of thing. And so what we're finding ourselves doing is using media to put those lessons on rocket boosters, and to also provide a blueprint, a scaffolding, if you will, so that people know that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. In
Mhm.
fact, before I left Virginia Tech, I wrote a 60-year plan based on the lives of 4 people. And I said,
Okay.
okay, what did they do to be successful? Then let me reverse engineer that, and I'll do everything they did.
Interesting.
And then as you get older, wiser, you add your own scaffolding. Additionally, um, you you develop this plan, and you check it. You check off the each time you get an achievement or you do something on your plan. But a thing that is important to know is that you know you don't have to have it all figured out.
Mhm.
Life is a dynamic process, and you kind of go with the flow sometimes, and you're flexible. So in that plan, you have the plan, so it provides direction. Things come up, and if they don't advance your plan, you don't do them.
Yeah.
And if they advance your plan, you can consider them. It doesn't mean you always do everything just because it may help your plan. You have to
Mhm.
be strategic and you have to think about it. But you have to start out with the plan, write it down, and then you can check against it. I still keep mine. It's in a drawer right behind me. And I remember one time early in our relationship, my wife was like, "Do you really have a 50-year plan?" I went and opened the drawer, pulled it out, and showed it to her. And I got one thing left to check off. And, so I feel pretty blessed that at the halfway point in my life, I've achieved everything on my plan except for one.
That's amazing.
And so that is to create the Rising Sons and Daughters Foundation. So I've already reserved the URL,
Oh,
and we have the website, and we've identified leadership, and at some
wow.
point we'll fund the foundation, and then I'll I may shift away from movies and mostly doing our philanthropy. And Jackie and I
Uh-huh.
will, spend some time doing that and lifting people and preparing the next Jackie's, BK's, and Lisa.
I just what y'all are doing, it's just so many layers to it. It's like an ecosystem of all these good things tied together, and each one reinforces the other. But I have to tell you also, in just the one movie that we watched Saturday, Hell on the Border, obviously the main character is um, Bass Reeves.
Right.
And I don't know if this is going to come out right, so I apologize if it doesn't. But I love that he's the hero, but not in a way that put down the other races and ethnicities that were in it.
Right.
And too often, no matter what the film is, they make people into caricatures of whatever their race is or anything. And I loved that it was, it was straight up human.
Right.
Um, and good people, bad people, but it didn't matter. There weren't the caricatures. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, that was an important point for the film and important for us as a film company. So all our films tend to be multi-ethnic, intergenerational as well, various faith traditions, and because that's the way the world is, right?
Right.
And so important to be authentic. And we're using the media to send a message. I mean, more often than not, when I think through all the people that mentored me, they all didn't look like me. In fact,
Right.
most of them did.
Uh-huh.
And that's fine. I think once you connect with the humanity and with your own humanity, it's easier to see the humanity in others,
Yeah.
even when they're not behaving so nicely. I mean, one of the best reinforcements I had of this, I was in Chicago with some friends, and Jackie and I were there, and we were at a forum on Ida B. Wells, and her granddaughter, I think it was talking about her grandmother. And Ida B. Wells, people know about some of her lynching research, and she was a writer. She had her own newspaper. It was burned down a few times, but she kept bringing it back. And she did all this stuff on lynching. She would go undercover. I think she was trained, might have been Columbia, but anyway, she was a real investigative journalist back before people even knew what investigative journalism was. She would have to disguise herself and go to the scene of a lynching and ask questions and things like that, so she could write about it.
Wow.
And people didn't want that because they didn't want these stories of these horrific murders to come out. Persons unknown. Well, she was there and had the facts. Oh no, we know who it was. It was just 3 people right here. And so they asked the granddaughter the question, why did your grandmother put herself at risk to write about these horrific events? What made her think she had a chance at impacting anybody? And our answer is classic, and our answer is medicine for the soul, and it's medicine for us today. What her grandmother said was this, that it was her faith that told her that her work could make a difference. She said, I believe that in every human being, there is at least one chord of decency. And if I can strike that chord with truth, it will sound in justice and righteousness. In every human being, there's at least one chord of decency. And if I can strike that chord with truth, it will sound in justice and righteousness. That's what she believed. And
That's
so
powerful.
that's powerful.
And emotional. Just the thought of what she went through to get that message out, to get the real news out to people.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I remember reading in that there was, I think it was Hollywood magazine.
Hollywood Weekly, yeah.
Yeah, Hollywood Weekly, the profile on y'all and about Jackie's dad working at the, what was it, like a golf club or country club or something at Williamsburg?
Right. Well, that was, I believe, her grandfather.
Oh, grandfather. Okay.
Yeah.
And that he had to lend the president or whoever money. And I was like, that's just so poignant, that not surprising either. And but I love that y'all both came from regular everyday American families, and look at what y'all have achieved. Yeah. And you've achieved it here in Little Virginia, which a lot of people,
Look, if we can do it, anybody can do it. I mean, that's the other part of our story. Jackie and I are very humble people, and we are not looking for accolades, frankly. I mean, I believe that the real genius in the world is identifying the genius in others.
Yeah.
And helping to cultivate that. And so, because if everybody's doing good, we all do better. And so for Jackie and I, it's about how do we take all the things we've learned, all the blessings we've received, and then pay it forward so that other people can grow into the fullness of who they were made to be. And each one of us has an assignment. And if a person doesn't do their assignment, it won't get done. And it's just something that the world will do without, and it'll be a loss for the world. And so what I try to encourage people to do is find that thing that really inspires them, that really they love to do. Because frankly, telling these stories is not really work for me. I enjoy it. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'm up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I don't even know what time. It's just it happened to be 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm up because I need to be up to finish this book or edit
Mhm.
this project, or I'm writing this story. I mean, a story will come to me at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It's burning. I had to get up and write it. And fortunately, I'm blessed with the ability to write pretty quickly. So I write my typical children's book. I'll write in 20 to 30 minutes.
Mm.
And then a novel that's several hundred pages, 30 days probably is more
Yeah.
than enough for me.
Oh.
And because I'll just sit down and just start writing. Sometimes I'll write 20, 30 pages in one sitting.
Mhm.
And um and then sometimes it comes and you're writing more. I've learned to record because I can record the ideas faster than I can write them.
Yeah.
And sometimes also when I write up, I got this chicken scratch and I can't read my own writing.
That's how I am, BK. I've been working on a computer for so long, I can hardly even write anymore. Yeah, and
Hardly
I write
write.
it and I'm like, what does it say?
What does it say? And then I don't even want y'all to see this, but it's like all this chicken scratch and so I have all these lines and
I
stuff.
love it.
And so I've got to kind of transcribe it if I
That's
do put it
funny.
down on paper.
Well, I'm glad to know it isn't just
It's
me.
not just you. No, no. I think that it's a human thing,
Yeah.
and I've gotten better at keeping myself organized. And because I feel like when I'm organized, then I can juggle more balls in the
Yeah,
air. And
definitely.
I like to do many things. So I chair a cybersecurity company. Got the film company, the other companies, the books, and all that stuff. And then we invest in a couple of other businesses, um, some related, some not.
Mhm.
But we uh, we don't limit ourselves, and
Y'all are busy people.
and we're having fun, and
Yeah.
life is designed for us to use ourselves up.
Mhm.
We didn't come here to stay, so people should, not assume that they're going to be here 100 years. Hopefully, I mean, I'd like to see what 100 feels like if I can do it and have all my wits about me and,
Yeah.
and not be too much of a burden on anyone. I don't want to be a
Mhm.
burden on Jackie or anyone that loves me.
Yeah.
At the same time, I am intellectually curious, and I want to I want to see everything. I want to know more about other people's culture. Like right
Mhm.
now, probably my my biggest regret is that I don't know more about other people's culture. So I'm taking the time to read all these different books, and then I'll take some classes with some fun professors to learn. And uh,
Yeah.
but I probably read, I don't know, 6 or 7 books a month. I just finished reading Will Smith's new book, Will. I highly
Oh,
recommend.
I've heard that's great. I haven't read it yet, but I've
Yeah,
heard it's
I'm
great.
impressed. When I see him next, I will make sure that I tell him that I really enjoyed it and bought a few copies to share with friends. But he did a great job. And
Um,
uh, Cast by Isabel Wilkerson is a great book. I'll be spending some time with Annette Gordon Reed later this week, who won, I think she won a Pulitzer for her book on Sally Hemings,
mm,
and the relationship with Thomas Jefferson. And she
mm.
happened to be a law professor of mine when I was in law school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so things come around,
That's
and
cool.
yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I live a blessed life, and we work hard. We also play hard, enjoy ourselves, the trips to Italy and things like that.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, my biggest joy is when the work we have done has been so inspiring for someone that they go and start a business, or their business does better, or our children do something that lets us know that they actually listened to what we said.
Mhm.
And so when stuff like that happens, I feel good. We've got 3 boys that we look out for: Joshua, Terrell, and Sam. And we feel fortunate that they are around and they're still receptive to suggestions.
What ages are they?
Oh wow!
Like teenagers?
No. Thank God, no. Late 20, mid to
Oh,
late
okay.
20s. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of learning about different cultures, a lot of times people think that people from rural areas, that we're more closed-minded and stuff. And when I was, I don't know, I was probably 16-ish, 17-ish when the first Mexican migrant workers started coming to Virginia to work in tobacco.
Uh,
And my sister was majoring in Spanish at Tech, and I used to be fluent because she and I would speak it to practice it. And so she was interpreting for them, and I would interpret if she wasn't around. And so we got to know them, and my parents got to meet them. And my father was blind. I don't know if you knew that, but he was blind. He grew up in abject poverty in the mountains. And but anyway, my parents just loved being around somebody from another country, and they were just like absorbing the culture. And we would have these guys, we got really close to this one man, but we'd have him bring all his guys over every Sunday, and my parents would cook and they would cook, that we'd have American food and Mexican food, and they would play music with daddy. And it was just so much fun. And my mother started teaching her. She would write them letters when they would go home in the winter. So she was teaching herself to read and write, and then she would mail it to my sister for her to proof it. It was so funny.
oh my
But
goodness.
it's just that curiosity about other people and wanting to learn and not being afraid of people who are different, that when you can be like that, it opens the world up so much. So I really appreciate that my parents, led by
Embrace.
example with things like that for us.
Yeah. I got two stories that support what you just shared. So
Okay.
both funny. One more funny than the other. I'll tell the story about the Latino workers, since you mentioned the gentleman that you all hung out with for a little
Mhm.
bit. So I think the first big house that I built when I became a corporate executive,
Yeah.
um, it was in Loudoun County, Virginia, and it was a lot of um, Latino laborers who were doing some of the really artisan skills. I mean, they could
Yeah.
paint and edge without all the tape and stuff. It was amazing. But what some people were complaining about was that later on they were finding stuff in their house, trash in the walls, or an issue here or there. Their punch lists were
Mhm.
super, 100, 200 items. And so I realized when I saw some of the contractors talking to the artisans, the Latino artisans, they were being disrespectful.
Yeah.
And so the way these guys who weren't speaking a lot of English were getting back at them, they were putting stuff in the walls and maybe doing stuff that they shouldn't do. So I was like, I know how to get in front of this. So I would go buy Gatorade and water, snacks, and I'd write, thank you, gracias. I would always speak to them with respect.
Mhm.
I would thank them for working on my home, tell them this is my first house like this, and I'm so excited and so honored that they would take the time to work on my house. You know how many things I had on my punch list when those guys were done?
None?
10. It was a
Thank you.
7,000 square foot house. I had
Oh my gosh.
10 things, and I'm talking little things like there's, a little paint on the window here.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it was stuff like that. These guys did their job. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it shows treat people with humanity, treat
Yeah,
them with respect, and you
right.
will get respect.
You get respect. And so the other one is it's this kind of kind of the country, you know, you know, it was like don't judge a book by its cover kind of story. So when I was at Tech, when I was flunking out, I decided to join the National Guard because I thought I was going to go into the military because Tech was going to throw me out any day now. And when you're in the National Guard, you go every summer for 2 weeks. It's called drill, and you go and you practice all the skills and things like that. And one of the things we were doing was we were bivouacking or hiking,
Mhm.
and we had to go up to this mountain. but it was summer and it was hot, and the guys were saying, BK, bring your heavy rucksack, your heavy sleeping bag. This thing weighed 50 pounds. Bring your heavy sleeping bag because it's gonna get cold on the mountain at night.
Uh-huh.
These are hunters and stuff like that. I should have been listening to those guys, but they look like,
You're like, yeah, whatever.
What does he know? I'm an engineering student. I'm smarter than this guy. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lisa, they're struggling to get up the mountain, and I got my little light poncho, and I'm going up the mountain, and I'm having a good time, and I'm spinning and laughing, and then it starts to get cold.
The sun starts going down.
Sun starts going down. I got my little wool cap with the flaps on. I'm pulling it around my head, and I'm sitting there crying. Oh, I'm cold. And then there was one guy named Curtis. Now, Curtis kept a rebel flag in the back window of his truck.
Uh-huh.
Had a southern drawl. He was from like Christiansburg, Virginia. Hadn't been to school. And I'm like, Curtis, I need to get in that sleeping bag with you tonight. Curtis said, I didn't know you liked me like that, Fulton. Don't you try nothing. Well, come on in, brother. I got you.
Aw, that's awesome.
Come in, brother.
Yep.
I got you.
Yep.
That's what the man said.
That's awesome.
He is a friend to this day.
Wow.
And I learned not to judge a book by its cover. At the end of the day, we're all cousins trying to find our way home. And this stuff we get caught up with is such a poor use of our talents.
It is.
Poor use of God's blessings. I pray that we can turn this stuff where it seems like everything's against it. Either Republican or Democrat, either this, either that. Come on, guys. We trying to do what's right for America.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to do what's right for our planet. We're trying to do what's right for our children.
Yeah.
We're trying to do what's right for each other. Let's compromise a little bit. Let's work together and advance this thing called the United States.
Yeah.
And so for me, my work is in part designed to advance those conversations, advance those collaborations, to encourage people to learn more about others, to learn more about themselves, to awaken so that they can be the best version of themselves. And if we do that, then I think I can rest in peace. I can know that the world will be right for my children, for people you love, for people that the audience members love. And we just have to continue to encourage each other and lift each other and be kind. Be kind. Leading with kindness is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a guy that chooses to start with kindness. I'm an expert in martial arts. I'm an expert marksman, former soldier. I mean, I can cause some damage.
Uh-huh.
But it takes so much more talent to heal.
It does.
So much more. It creates so much joy when you lift people with love.
Uh-huh.
And so that's why I do this work. It's an act of love.
Well, and I just personally feel like we all have so much more in common than we have different. And that's one thing. And we concentrate too much on what the differences are instead of what we have in common. But we also, my brain, I just totally lost it. Oh, it's also so much easier to be negative because when you think about it, if you're negative and you're mad, that gets your energy going. You get all riled up. It's harder to be content and happy. A lot of people think that being happy means, all giddy and all. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that. And so people can't sustain that. They think they have to act all, just like I said, like giddy. And so because they're not getting this huge shot of adrenaline when they're content, they feel like something's wrong. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
certainly not an expert, but just in watching people throughout my life, it just seems like it's so much easier to be negative. So challenge yourself to be positive, challenge yourself to find the good in things because it is harder. So challenge.
yeah. Yeah. I think it's wise to learn to filter yourself through a few lenses.
Mhm,
So when you talk to people, is it true what you're saying?
mhm.
Is it necessary to say what you intend to
Yeah,
say? And then is it kind? And
yeah.
I think if we tried those filters more often than not, then the world would be better. I think, generally, the negative is seductive.
Mhm.
And so, "Oh, did you see that person?" Or those kind of things. And you
Yeah.
go on, you get a little laugh for a minute,
Mhm.
but it is fleeting. And I think when you show someone appreciation, it's lasting.
Yeah.
When you show someone love, it's lasting. People will forget most things that
Mhm.
happen and that we do with them or for them, but they will tend to always remember the way you made them feel.
Mhm.
And so that's it. That's again, we're human beings. There's this relationship things that matter to us. So that's why um, spouses, significant others, relationships with children, relationships with our community. That's why that stuff is so important. And people do crazy things thinking that they're protecting the
Yeah.
stuff that they love or the communities that they love. The problem happens is when they decide that I know better than anybody what the
Mhm.
world needs.
Yeah.
And I'm so convinced of that I'm going to cheat or lie or
Mhm.
beat you up so I can be in control because I know what's good for you.
Yeah.
And that's when you start slipping into kind of a psychosis or schizophrenia or somebody that's just drunk with the idea of power or don't want to give up power. So
Mhm.
they, change the rules or make it so that it's harder for us to exercise our right to vote, as a recent example.
Mhm.
And the good people have to fight against that. Not
Yeah.
everybody in a position of authority should be in authority. There's
That's
some
for
people
sure.
that
Yeah.
they need to go somewhere and sit down. Maybe they need to drink some of this and they feel a lot
Yeah, that's right.
better.
And like you said, leading with kindness, starting with kindness. When you're kind to people, it comes back to you. You know, it usually it ends up making you feel better than the person that you were kind to. You
Yeah.
know,
People
it really does feel good. And of course, the people that you're kind to who are not kind in return, whatever, smile and keep going. You
and
know.
keep it moving. Look, you don't lose anything by smiling and being kind to people. And I think that I know I always feel much better about uh, my interactions with folk when I leave with a smile, when they come back at me with the same kind of smile.
Hmm.
And uh, we all have the capacity to kind of turn days around or turn even the worst days into great days. I mean, people, when it's raining, snowing, hey, it's all good. If I wake up on the right side of the dirt, it's a good day.
Yeah, on the right side of the dirt. I love that. And I love what you said earlier about what was it? Life was meant to be used up.
Yes, yes.
Uh, that is, I've never heard anybody say that before. That is so cool. I'm looking to see if anybody has any questions. My friend Amy T. Meyer, who is a military veteran,
Okay. Hey, Amy.
she said she's volunteered with the Urban League out there. She lives in Washington State. She said, I learned about so many inventors and inventors of color. And then she said she'd love a list of your movies. So I'll put together a list and put it like in the show notes.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
of course, link over to
yeah,
everything.
you can just send them to our website and click on
Yeah.
films and the whole list is there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Todd Rowley or Rowley,
Uh-huh. Todd Montgomery.
Rowley, he says, excellent discussion, BK. Well done, my friend.
Thank you, Todd.
Risa Motley Reynolds says,
Hey, Risa.
BK, I'm so proud of you and Jackie.
Thank you. I love Risa. Look, Risa's late husband, Charles, was a mentor of mine.
Oh.
And he was probably one of the youngest people to run a a bank, and one of the largest black bank that was in the country for a while, and then he ran a bank in Virginia, and then created a successful business that Risa still runs to this day,
Oh,
and just really wonderful people. We travel together. We're family, and that's one of the other things I think it's important to say is that there's nothing like the people that pour into you,
yeah,
and if you're open to it, they come around at the perfect time.
yeah.
None of us come here to stay, Lisa. And so we don't know when it's going to be our time. We just don't.
Hmm.
And so while you are awake and have time, do something good with it. Lift up people. Be kind. Be the kind of person that you want people to be to you.
You.
And you know, when I go, I want people to say about me that this guy walked the talk,
Yeah.
that he tried to help. He tried to be of service. Um, you know, we get a lot of accolades because the work is excellent.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm not doing it for that.
Yeah.
You know, the crazy thing is I don't even do it for the money.
Hmm.
I do it because those stories really changed my life. And I want that blessing for other people. That's
Yeah.
the reason. That is the sole reason. And because our intentions are pure, because they are genuine, I think that's part of the reason that we're successful. I mean, of course, because we do the work.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a team, you know, Monty Ross, who helped Spike Lee to found 40 Acres and a Mule. Um, Keon Martin, who's our chief development officer, or chief creative officer and chief operating officer. He's like my right hand guy. He understudied under Joel Schumacher and Martin
Mm.
Scorsese and helped to found the original Movie Pass. Nick Powell, who's our co-founding editor of the magazine. He was a very talented writer and writes most of the articles for the magazine. My wife Jackie edits most of them.
Mm.
She and I kind of, she's got the final pen on everything and all the
Yeah.
things that I write. But we do it from a place of love. We do it from a place of excellence. And mentors like Charles and Doug Wilder and Tom Talkie, Ivan Seidenberg, Hugh Price, these people were instrumental for me. I mentioned that I wrote that 60-year plan based on the lives of others. It was Vernon Jordan, Ron Brown, Marianne Spraggins, and Dick Parsons. All of
Wow.
them were lawyers, so that's
Mhm.
why I'm a lawyer. All
Yeah.
of them worked in the Northeast at some point, so that's why I went to work in the Northeast. I
Uh-huh.
mean, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
And just telling these stories, I believe, will help a lot of people because I do believe in our country. I believe in our ability as human beings to uh, be even better
Yeah.
than we currently are. I think there's always a higher gear. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to be better. I'm going back and reading books I read when I was a student at Tech, but rereading them with the lens of a person who's 50 something
Uh-huh.
versus the person who was 20 something. And I'm getting whole new insights and learning more and then applying that and putting that in my stories and putting that in my interactions with people. I love people. And my wife's got me cooking now, so I can
Oh,
invite you over to cook you something. You'll
yeah.
see.
I love the. What kind of cooking do you like to do?
I bake a lot of seafood,
Mhm.
and I've got pretty good at making soups. I don't know how I do it, but they come out pretty good. As a matter of fact, for Super Bowl Sunday, I'm going to make a crab corn chowder, and I may throw a
Oh,
little lobster in there just for fun.
oh man, that sounds delicious.
Come
I'll
get
be
some.
right over.
Come get some.
That sounds wonderful. I was Mark N says, BK, your stories and messages are so inspiring and timely. Laura's listening with me. Thank you for sharing your time with all of us.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Laura. And some other fans of Virginia Tech.
Oh
And
yeah, woo! Tech Hokies.
yeah,
I need to
so
get some more Hokies on here. I had Wes Harper on. He lives in Raleigh and he owns an I managed IT services company in Raleigh. well, his company is there. He lives out at Lake Gaston, but he's a Hokie, and he was on Naked and Afraid 3 times.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so so I had him, and then I had a guy the other week from over at the beach who started a granola bar company with the spent grains from craft breweries.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so some interesting people, but just coincidence that they're Hokies,
Yeah.
not trying to have all the Hokies on. I've had people from all over the world on the show and all ages, and that's the way I like it. But you mentioned Doug Wilder. He was always so inspiring to me, and I was so proud when he was elected governor, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. He's a neighbor of mine. He's a fraternity brother.
awesome.
He's a wonderful confidant, and he just had his 91st birthday, and so a number of us contributed
He doesn't look, and of course, I might not be seeing the photographs I've seen of him recently. He does not look 91. Good genes, I guess.
I guess so. But he's really a remarkable man. One of the things we see each other in the halls from time to time, and he said, BK, the reason that you're accomplishing so much is that while you go about doing it, other people are talking about it. So keep doing the work. And then he'll go off and you know, and I'll think about it. But as I really absorb what he's saying, he's absolutely right. The win is in the work, Lisa.
Yeah.
I mean, you do this as kind of a public service, but it takes time. You have to research your subjects, you know, get all this technology working, and, you know, have a platform to make it available later. And so that's work. And so you do it, you love it, you enjoy it. It's just part of what you do. And I think that that's why it's going to be successful, because
it is.
You put in
so much fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny because, well, the reason I started doing this, I wanted to do a podcast for 3 years, and I kept worrying too much about the details. I'm one of these people, if I can stay at 30,000 feet, I'm good. But when I get down in the weeds, I don't get out. So I kept obsessing about all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do a live show. Then it's out in the wild. I can't obsess about it. You know, it's already out there. And I love doing it. And even if I'm having like a bad day or I'm tired, I'm like, I don't have time. The minute I get on and start talking with whoever I'm talking with, I always have so much fun, and I have such a recharge of energy. And there was a time period last year, can't remember exactly what it was. It must have been when I was writing the book. And I put the show on pause for a few weeks because I had to finish this book. And I remember I was like, I felt so just kind of blah. And I was like, what's wrong with me? And then I realized, I think it was because I was missing those nights of having people to talk with. And just a fun, interesting conversation, you know?
Yeah. Well, let me share this, and we probably should wrap it a little bit.
Yeah.
Life is for the living. Life is meant to be enjoyed. All of us will die, but not all of us will live. And it's very important to live. And when you get to know the things that we know, you live each day rejoicing. I am happy when I wake up. I am happy to see the things that are unfolding in front of me, and I embrace them. And I hope those things make me better. And I hope I contribute back more than I borrow. And that's the kind of life I want for my children. That's the kind of life I want for people I love. Be amazed at life. Wake up each day and embrace it. That energy comes, that those ideas spark. All the things that you need to be the best version of yourself, you already possess. Now it's just a matter of bringing them out and enjoying the journey.
Okay, that's the perfect thing to end on. That was just beautiful. Before we go, though, I want you to tell everybody, I'm going to put it in the show notes, but tell them really quickly where to find out more about you.
Okay, the best place to find out stuff on our production company and our various projects, the books, the films, everything, is at Soulidifly.com. Let me spell it for you. Soulidifly.com. Make sure you do the FLY. Some people just put they leave out the L, but it's fly.
Mhm.
And you'll get the right place, and it's cool. So that's why you put it in. But Soulidifly.com, everything's there.
It is cool. And I downloaded your app last weekend, and I was watching that movie about the son that got shot.
Oh, okay.
The judge, and I got interrupted. I didn't get to finish, but the app is really cool.
Well, thank you. Let me know. Let me know if you like any particular stories. We'll be adding content. We add content probably every week or so. We add something new.
Okay. BK, thank you so much. I know that you're really busy. Thank you so much for giving me the time and the audience the time to share your knowledge and experience with us. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it as well.
Okay, thanks. Bye,
All right.
everybody. See you next week.
See you. Take care, everybody.